Nerima Wako is the founder and executive director of Siasa Place. She's our guest today as we have our youth conversation today, which is, can the youth form what?
Political power.
Yes. Can the youth...
What is it? Can the youth?
Consolidate.
Well, it's basically, can the youth take power?
Yes.
Long and short.
Yes.
The long and short of it.
The long and short of it is
simple
that.
English.
Can Gen Z build political power? Yeah,
Yes.
so it's about building political power.
And Nerima has been doing this for 10 years at Siasa Place and dealing with politics and power and looking at how to organize, how to mobilize and all. And she'll give us her experience over those 10 years and also what she sees going ahead. Karibu sana, Nerima.
Thank you. So happy to be here.
It's good to have you.
It feels like Friday.
It does.
It does, eh?
It does. It does.
Yeah, even for Jano.
Especially for Jano.
Especially for Jano.
Not Friday for fun times. I'm like, today I'm going to bed at 7 p.m. My bones are weary.
Your quote, Jano?
No, that is fun times, Jano.
Oh, for yes.
As a lover of sleep.
Yeah. You can relate.
You and your kazi ya Friday.
Yeah,
Kuna
honestly.
kazi ya Friday. Apart from kulala.
Kuna ingine kweli. Today's quote was said by Wangari Maathai back in 2004. She was giving a public lecture and she said, wait too long and we miss the moment. Move too soon and we may stumble. Leadership is knowing when to do both. Right? So wait too long, we miss the moment. Move too soon, we may stumble. Leadership is knowing when to do both. Sure, it's something you've seen.
I feel like that's where we are. Yeah. Definitely as a country. Yesterday, I was part of a meeting that was being led by Kenya Young Parliamentarians. And there was a young lady, Teo, 18, just finished from Kenya High. And she was talking about a story where she fell when she was riding her bicycle when her dad was with her. And so she falls and she asks, Dad, help me. And he looks at her and he's like, don't you have two hands? You know? And she's 8. Why don't you use your two hands and pick yourself up? And she said that's what the motto she's been living through. And she just basically reminded us that where we are, you know, a lot of young people have to use their two hands and pick themselves up because the country has fallen. And it's up to us to use our hands to pick ourselves up and not expect to be pulled up, helped up, because even with that generation, even when we look at our history, clearly there have been moments where we feel Kenya is changing, there's optimism, then it's like the same old crap. Yeah, so we are in that moment where we're like, okay, there's a moment here. Are we going to go to the same old crap? Or are we actually going to pick ourselves up into something new? And it's exciting and scary at the same time.
Do you think there's a space for lessons to pick from the past?
Absolutely.
Like looking at the past and objectively seeing, this is what they did. These are the good things that they did that made them get to that point. These are the good things that they did past that point. And these are the bad things that they did that, you know, maybe deflated the full potential of their next steps.
Several moments. And even when you look at, say, Mau Mau movement, what happened? Did the land actually go back to freedom fighters? No. Who ended up gaining power and wealth? We know. What happened with repeal, Section 2A 92? Students, churches coming together and pushing for multipartyism, a new constitution. Has the constitution brought power? A little bit, yes. Was the constitution watered down? Yes, because we had several drafts. Naivasha, Wako draft, then now we had the constitution that we have now. Does it hold leaders accountable? No. Do we still see public officials interfering with public resource? Yes. Is it difficult to take them to court? Yes. Is it difficult to remove them from government? Yes. So I would say the lessons that we learn is the people who push for change don't end up being the people who carry the change. We honestly, as a people, and this is what's happening with what happened last year, you know, young people come out there like they want a new Kenya, they want accountability, they want justice, and then people come and hijack the moment. We're witnessing a hijack. And for me, it's about those people who were passionate about Kenya being different, taking the courage to stand up to that mantle and to continue, to form vehicles, to be part of vehicles, and to make sure they implement that vision that they see and not hand over that power. So I refuse to hand over. What we're seeing is political elites grabbing that power, trying to do everything they can because they can see their power is being let loose. And this is the moment where I feel we can learn from the past, where we've seen people hand over power, it has never worked. And in our generation saying, how do we capture that power, remain in that power, that momentum, and allow for things to implement?
On that point, Nerima, and we might go back and speak to you about the evolution of how you've seen youth and power evolve over the last decade. But just on the point that you've just made, the question we've been asking, especially this week, from when you make a point like that, is the how and the what next. So you're saying, we can't allow it to be grabbed. You know, you've used a really powerful term. You said this is a hijacking. This is what's happening. And we must be able to not give up that power, but essentially hold on to it and take it to the next level. The how. From everything you're witnessing and observing, from everything you've witnessed and observed, what do you think the next step looks like, the how?
So let me take us back just a little bit. So when Siasa Play started, my early 20s, don't know what we're doing. We actually started on Twitter, on X. And people didn't take us seriously because we were like, this is where engagement's going to be, especially for, you know, our age, technology is rising. And people are like, you can't be an online organization. That doesn't make sense. And then we are hybrid, right? So now 10 years on, we actually saw how people are going to talk about issues. We're already talking about issues, highlighting accountability, mobilizing, organizing. And we're like, this is where most people are going to now be able to interact because we're going to minimize physical interactions. So fast forward, we're like, we saw this coming, okay? And the observations that I'm making, there are several. So one, we are used to seeing leaders growing from clusters. Teachers' unions, church, chama, doctors' unions, unions in general, trade. Now you have leaders popping up on a social media platform. They literally wake up overnight and they have thousands, hundreds of thousands of followers because someone really liked how they said something. And then you find this individual now is like, oh, I have a community. What the heck? What do I do with this community, man? And so now they start finding issues. So they are working backwards. And that's something that we're finding really fascinating in this space. How you are now, you have the community, now you have to trace your steps back. What to do with this community? What's the issue? Right. And it was the other way around. That's one. Number two is it was really, really difficult to register Siasa Place, okay? Yeah. Because of the word Siasa. I was told multiple times they're never going to allow it. At some point, they refused until, you know, my board, quite bold, we still are, was like, why are they stopping you? This is something that you can sue on grounds. And so in the end, when they let us have our certificate, we learned about the systemic barriers that are put in place to make sure that youth do not organize. It's the question on who is behind. Who is behind this little girl?
These young people.
These young people.
There always has to be someone. It can never just I feel this way. Right. I'm passionate about this. I'm doing it. It just has to be who's pulling the strings.
Yeah, whose agenda are you pushing?
Yeah, because this small girl with her team of 7 friends, they can't be thinking about the future of Kenya. Come on, like they should be out with their friends, hanging out, and having fun. So that was also what caused the delay in terms of trying to trace who is pushing us and fronting us. And then
same way they're trying to trace who's behind Gen Z.
Yeah, you know, because clearly they cannot think for their own, you know. We give them the responsibility to vote, you know, choose a leader, but to think on their own,
that's kind of wild. Why would you think
you're pushing it?
You're pushing it. So in the end, we were, you know, being told that also because of the name Siasa, politics, so they're like, why are you not just forming a political party? It's like you're disguising yourselves as this group of young people who care about Kenya, but you really want to join or form a party. And there was this fear of, oh my goodness, young people leading. It's like, it's going to be chaotic and it's going to be something that we can't manage. So what I see is how organizing has changed, how we view leaders has changed, because now people have been placed with that mantle. You know, I don't even know when people started calling themselves activists, for instance. You know, even for me, all of a sudden I'm being called a governance expert or a policy analyst. And I'm like, oh, okay, I'm aware it. But you know, and so you find these responsibilities and tags, which I also see some individuals battling between going back and forth. Am I an activist? Am I political? Am I a politician? And that is identity. So you're seeing young people who are passionate, but they don't really have this defined identity. And so they are moving between. And then there's also the aspect of, even though we have affirmative action, statistically, you know, we have more women, but at the same time, we don't. And I say this because even in 2022, when you look at the number of young women, for instance, who were elected, I'm not talking about nomination, elected below the age of 35, 17, 17. And young men.
Out of 1,000,
yeah,
1,089.
1,888 or something like that.
Yes, in the awards. And even when we talk about young men below the age of 35, there were over 300. So 300 young men and 17 young women, okay? And so people will say all the time, but we've progressed. I mean, look at women now, they're in leadership. Yes, they are, but it's still minority. And you will find counties where there's only one elected woman. I've seen county assemblies where there's only one woman who was elected. The rest are nominated. So we see progress, and at the same time, we seem to be retrogressing, right?
Yeah.
So back and forth.
We do like one forward, one back.
Yes.
Just before you continue with your thought, I wanted to ask, there's something you touched on, and I was like, I can't let this one go before we talk about it. The way that people are building followers really quickly online, fantastic. But usually when you come up the traditional way, through your church, through your community, through your union, people know your politics or your values or your whatever.
Yeah.
So you already have believers and people who are aligned to that vision. This other way now, how do you build? Yeah, because people are like, no, love how she came out during finance bill, love how she gave us civic education behind, but what is she about? Yeah.
They are finding it backwards. They're finding it now. And that's why it doesn't surprise me to see the confusion in terms of what are my ideologies. You know, you have to study, be around people and be like, okay, I stand for this. This is something I believe. I can chew on it. I can preach it. But they are finding themselves in these spaces so fast, meeting people they've seen on TV, and then all of a sudden they're friends. And then you're like, no, I'm not about this. And then you see them dipping out.
Right.
So that's natural. And there's going to be a lot of that, especially amongst young people, as they find that identity. And it's something that normally would take time, like even in student leadership universities. A lot of our politicians, you know, James Orengo, Miguna, name them, Anyang' Nyong'o, it was UN. It was student leadership. It was finding your ideologies, your group, your club, your tribe. So they had the time, the patience, and they were given the environment. I mean, under dictator, yes.
Yeah.
But they had, you know, access to books. They were meeting. They were talking. Deep conversations about building. And then looking at the geopolitics of the world and seeing, does Kenya want to go east or west? Now? No. Now? No. Even student leadership, how it's done has changed since the Dwale Act of 2016. And we all know it's due to Babu Owino. Now there's the delegate system. So you can't even come as, oh, we like Mariam. Like, we like what she stands for. She has to come with a whole team of 5.
Right.
And you're like, I don't like who the secretary is on that team. So, I'm not gonna,
all of them. Yeah.
And you normally find that the group that gets most of the goodwill is the one that's supported by the deans.
Boom. And the one with the money.
Vested interest.
Another thing with student politics is Anyang' Nyong'o and Orengo could do that because they were also just in school for intellectual nourishment. They had no other worries at that time. I'm
Even
looking at students right now. Yes, they had a boom. 5K in 1980 something. My God, that's a lot of money to get at a semester. Right now, Nikuinama. What am I going to eat? Which meal do I skip? Do I skip lunch? Do I skip supper? Do I skip breakfast? Capitation hasn't come in. Help hasn't come in.
Yeah.
I'm put in the wrong tier. My dad, because apparently it's a contract job, that puts me in tier Sujui 2, where I only get 10%, but we need all the help. Those are the struggles.
And so they can't pour into the role
the leadership
as sub.
and,
Yeah, exactly.
Or into, anything.
They can't. And even, I think, there's a study, I believe it was done by Shujaz, where they looked at, I think, 2017, 2022, and looking at households and how much the children contribute to the bills. And we're seeing over time that percentage is increasing. In some households, it's like 90% of the bills. You're finding 18, 19, they are funding the bills. Parents are struggling. And that was not the same for, say, our parents.
Yeah, back then. I want to ask a question, Nerima, again, just going back to what you said about that identity question. So then how do we either hold space or extend grace to people who are trying to navigate identity publicly? They're just trying to figure it out. They're saying, I know I can lead. We're going to form a political party. This is what we're going to do. And the community is saying, you're so annoying. You have hijacked. You are this, you are that. Because I think you've spoken to something profound in that, actually, they're trying to figure it out on the go. How do we either hold space for or call out? Because right now, it's almost like they're going at it alone, maybe? Are they going at it
some
alone?
of them don't
or are they
want to
just
listen.
stubborn? Okay.
Some of them are stubborn. We have tried. Hey, we have tried personally. I normally extend I normally extend a hand. And so there are some who, will listen. They will be like, okay, give me guidance. There are some who are actually building the identity. And you can see it. They become stronger in particular stances. When something happens, even people begin to identify them with, hey, let's tag so-and-so. Maybe she or he can do something. Then there are some that are just all over the place. And unfortunately, a lot of us, when we are like looking for identity, it's been private. They've had to do that publicly. Yeah, so we are watching them crash and burn publicly. And I do not hope on any one of them that we have a serious crash because of their mental healthness or being insulted daily. It can take a toll on you. Serious toll. And also them understanding in terms of measuring how much you can take and how much you choose to receive is extremely important. So I would say that the wise ones would take a step back and measure and try and reach out to people who have been in this space and learn. You don't have to take everything from them, but some advice. And the ones who feel that they know everything are the ones who are going to see real quick how challenging politics can be. Because a day in politics is like 10 years. It's like 10 years. And even the way, understanding the history, like that's something we had to understand as Siasa place. And I'm always insisting with my team to read, understand what's going on, the dynamics of it. There's no loyalty. None. Like, I've never seen parties develop so fast. That just means for them to develop so fast, there's no ideology. It's so easy for you to just remove the colors and be like, I'm here. I'm here. And that is also traumatizing because you're someone who's like, okay, I believe in democracy. I'm liberal, for instance. And then someone else comes, they call the party democracy. They say they are liberal. But are they? Decisions are not made that way.
Mariam is like,
I know.
Just reflecting on.
I was just wondering what was on the front page of the Daily Nation. Wow. Democracy.
All parties, Mariam, have something to do with democracy.
Wonderful.
People.
Or social.
Okay. Or social. All of them. There's some democracy somewhere.
That's true.
Okay.
A hint.
So it's we are all
Sprinkle of
we are a
democracy.
democratic
Nation.
multi-party society, even in our constitution.
Imagine.
Let's define democratic.
Now that's the thing. There are different perceptions, and I want to bring that one now into. I hear and I like what you're saying. That, there are very many young people, and everybody is struggling to find an identity. Everybody is struggling to find a path, and there are those who think, okay, if I wait, if I don't do this, I will get distracted. I will not do it. Some could generally be thinking that if I just put my remove my foot from this pedal and I start focusing on, you what, I will not come back here. I'll lose that momentum, I'll lose the steam. And I don't feel I'll have done service or justice to myself or to others. So let me do it. Crash, burn, get up, go. Now, you've said there are some who listen and there are some who don't. But also, there's a perception issue. Listen to whom? Because if a society appears to be saying that these are the people you should listen to and these are the ones you should not listen to, then we're already forming, you know, different factions. And so if you choose to listen to this one today and then tomorrow you listen to the other, are you tapa-tapaing? Maybe you're just still in your studying. I sat here, I listened to Mariam. I spent some time with Mariam. Now I have understood Mariam and where Mariam has come from and where Mariam is going. Now I'm spending time with Janet. Listen to Janet, learn from Janet, spend time. Nerima watching from there is like, huyu mtu ana msimamo.
Yeah.
You're all over the place.
You see, let me tell you, politics, these guys meet all the time. They just don't take pictures. They meet all the time.
Which guys?
Yeah.
Which guys?
The guys who've been in politics, anyone who's been in politics for more than 20 years, let's start there.
The seniors.
The seniors, they meet.
They're in the same club.
Breakfast, dinner, they touch base. And sometimes almost on a weekly basis in terms of where is the country at? What are you measuring? What do we need to work on? But you're not going to see their meetings online. Okay? So there's the aspect of understanding politics and how, yes, you need to be visible as a politician, but it's strategic visibility. Unfortunately, a lot of young people struggle with the strategic visibility. Just because you're talkative doesn't mean that every time you speak, you make sense. And the other thing, to answer you, is about, are you being deep or being wide? Every time I meet with young politicians, I'm like, do you want to be deep where you know your community, so and so, even if someone was to give birth, you would even get an update. Like you know them. Or do you want to be wide where you're able to pay for, say, an SMS, USSD, unawasalimia kila wakati, the way we would get Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays from a certain governor here. You know, you're wide. And that's different strategies.
Right.
So they work at different times, and it also depends, they work for different people. But unfortunately, again, people confuse them because what is your overall goal? It's to access power. But what sort of power and at what level? Politics is extremely expensive. So the one thing that young people have is time, because they don't have the capital, they don't have the money. So you can traverse, and you can traverse cheaply, and you can get to know people face to face. You can have that identity as a branding, or you can use social media, again, to brand and to be able to cheaply have access and reach.
Let's pause on that point because we're going into a break. 7:30 here on Fixing the Nation on NTV, Nation FM, and our digital platforms. We have Nerima Wako in studio. We'll be back after the break just to talk about, what is it, the Gen Z have? Political power. Can Gen Z build political power? We're also on X, so make sure you join the space. We'll be crossing over there from 8 to 10. But for now, we'll be back. It's 7:30.
Especially unaonanga
things
kuna
happening.
vitu hapo.
Things happening.
Yeah.
Look, Nerima, over the last 10 years, you and others have been very active, you know, on politics as young people. There are those who woke up last year and they were like, "Aya, this politics in this country. Wow.
It's
No,
allowed.
for real.
It's okay. At least tuliamka. If you think you've been attacked, at least tuliamka.
If you feel attacked.
Uliamka, and that's what
If
matters.
you feel attacked, weka chini. Wacha nimalize kuongea alafu uelewe." Okay?
Okay.
And what has happened to those that were there before? And what role are you playing in the journey going forward? Right? Like, are the newcomers recognizing that you've been in this field? Do they need to? Should they do it? When you started this politics more than a decade ago, Did you just wake up and, realize, these things have been happening. These guys have been doing it wrong, so let me just do it my way.
Yeah.
I'm trying to see what's a space for those that have been there, have been doing it for a while, the experiences that they have in shaping what happens, especially to those that are now saying, I have actually felt, I have seen, and I want to join this conversation.
No, we partner, Latif. And there is, I'm a millennial, and even during the protest, there was a lot of support from millennials, from the lawyers, the medics, to even some of the breaking down deeply. So there's a partnership. And I think that...
The millennials on the streets.
Yeah. We're on the streets as well. And so I also feel that we know each other. We meet. I'm always open to meeting. And we do a lot of things together. And like I said, the wise ones reach out and they listen. So even in terms of partnership, we frequently meet. We have circles and we are working together. And they are willing to learn. That's what I like about, GenZs and the younger generations coming in. They want to know how to navigate. Where I would say it's different. Political parties, they are owned. And the owners make the decisions. And sometimes, especially people who are entering the space new, there's a sense of naivety where you're coming in and you're like, I can bring the change because of who I am. Influence must be built from within the party. What we're going to see is a lot of walkouts, especially of those in their 40s, the younger politicians. We're already seeing the disconnect from Salasia, Babu Owino to Malala, Sifuna. We are seeing it. That is actually a generation pushing back. And if people were wise, the ones who own these political parties, which are the boomers, if they were wise, they would find room or a way to coordinate and support. Otherwise, they will deal with Kanu or the Y2K walkout. We're going to see that repeat itself. Now, it's a lot difficult to register a party. And the ones who are fronting that they have parties out here, they've not registered. They've not registered. They don't. And Kenya is at party number 92, I think, at the moment. So these people will have to be wise in terms of collaboration. They are not going to be able to form a party just because they are young. They are going to have to get all generations to form this party because politics is expensive. You need capital. By the time you're recognized as a party, you have to have at least 25 county offices. That's expensive. And we're not talking about online offices. They must be physical. And then you're also talking about politics is local. So you're going to have to be known in the communities, not just as young leaders. They're also the madhis, mamambogas, the chiefs. And that, understanding the locality of politics is important, which sometimes leads to it being ethical. Because what the Constitution brought, yes, is devolution, but it also brought clanism. People start discussing clans. And big clans benefit from devolution much more than minority clans. So you'll see people having discussions like, we can't have two Kisis in one position. I don't know who I'm talking about. We can't have a Teso and a Samia going for governor because last time it was Teso, this time the conversations have become clan. And so that's the localization of politics. And not to say that ethnicity is bad. Diversity is good. But also understanding how politics works. So in a nutshell, Latif, what I'll say is they do know, where to find us, where we are. I believe you're going to see a lot more outward partnership. Sometimes, right now, it's quite early to come out politically. Because once you do, people don't want to do business with you. You have to start thinking about other ways of getting resource. So, Janet, you're vocal, you're here at the office, you're like, I want to go for senator. Your boss will be like, ai, hapa tufanyangi siasa. Wewe, kama unataka kufanya siasa, basi toka hapa.
A follow-up question to that, Nerima, about You know, this was about converting protest energy. I don't know how else to put it. The conversion of protest energy seems to skew towards forming a political party. Are there alternative paths?
No, because, you know, access to power
Straight
is
up.
only... Yeah.
Nope.
Nope. I know you wanted something in between. Nope.
I know you wanted a bit
You
more
have to
context.
do.
Nope.
You have to do the work. Go.
So I think that, you know, people can be involved in every space. And, you know, even that's why we call ourselves politics, because everything is political. And I think last year, a lot of young people realized that, like, hey, kumbe, the price of my pads
It's
is
political.
political. Are you serious? The price of beer?
Baby girl alikuwa najua tu najibanana.
Eh,
Sasa.
eh.
Finance bill ndani.
Danny.
Yeah.
And so that's when we saw, because even small businesses, influencers, they were being impacted by that. And so that's now you understand why politics is so important and for you to be involved. Then number two, the only way to access power constitutionally is through political organizing, which is parties. Now, there are parties that exist. There are some that have been dead. There are some that briefcase. There are some that are being revived. We even know individuals who have bought parties, Jimmy Wanjigi. So parties are always for sale, and then they rebrand them. However, like I said, to be able to do that sort of stuff, you have to have capital. But because you do not have capital, your next best option, again, is if you cannot form a political party, is to join a political party. And then you want to join a political party that you can influence. And how do you do that? Raising the numbers within the political parties, so that even during nominations, you go for positions within those parties, and you want to go for positions that are within the national executive councils. I have seen young leaders in youth leagues fight with party chairs. Not physically, but, you know, cleverly. Even locking their offices with padlocks, invading them during board meetings, just to push authority. And sometimes it's understanding those tactics and when to utilize them. Right. But I'm hopeful, because I think there are alternative parties we don't talk about at all. From the Green parties, Ukweli Party, UGM, there's also UDM, there's also Wangari Maathai's party. They're there. And so perhaps maybe this is an opportunity for those alternative parties to come together,
Right.
more organized, more vocally, and specifically targeting a lot of these young leaders and creating a home for them,
Right.
and giving them room to access power.
Some intentionality there. You mentioned the disconnect that we can already see with young leaders across the fold. Is there a place for them in these shifting dynamics, or do we just do we leave them behind? You mentioned, you know, Salasia, Sifuna, Babu Owino, Cleophas Malala, all who have at one point or the other been vocal, at least about one or two things. Sometimes it seems selective. It's like, is it only because it's touching you? But then, yeah, do we leave them behind, or is there a place for us moving forward with them?
There's a place. And I say this because we need as many people. I think in politics, it's one thing that I've learned. Everybody is a friend. Because one day, an enemy to my enemy is my friend. And in Kenyan politics, we have seen enemies are seasonal. And there's someone who say, usiweke siasa kwa roho. That's very deep, right?
Earlier this show, he would be reminding us every day.
Weka in koroho, quote Wavinya Ndeti.
Yeah.
Ukiweka siasa kwa roho, utakufa.
Utakufa, by the way.
The senator for Wasingishu is one who said, "Hii siasa weka kwa lungs."
Alafu, what is the...
Unapumua inatoka.
Inatoka. Yeah.
Just
And I think, like, once Kenyans learn that, because that is the politics that we've been living for decades. So it's also understanding that. Like, the only ones who fight because of politics ni watu wa grao. These guys don't. You can see them having tea. And you're just like, how did they? You're the one who's confused by yourself. By the
You
way.
confused yourself.
You're confused yourself, you know?
Them, they know
They
they are in a contest.
Yeah.
It's like finding Gore and AFC players. They are neighbors, they are friends, they know. Hiyo timu yenu lakini nasikia mnanunua striker. Siwangeleshe Ndosi. I'm available to come to join your team as a striker. It's the fans. Hatuwezi cross ile side ingine.
Yep.
Sisi ni fans wa AFC.
Yep.
The fans are not in on that story. Nerima, what's the one thing you've observed over the last decade, that either gives you hope or makes you worried about young people in leadership?
I will say the hopeful side. The hopeful side is we're seeing people who would not normally be considered politicians joining politics. For me, that diversity is rich. And it also brings about a sense of individuality and focus. Because when you have people who basically pay for their nomination tickets, if we let these people continue to rule us, we will be stuck. And that's how you're seeing, we're going to start seeing the development of only people with money having access to political power. And this is scary because the first thing they do is make sure that the tenders align to their private businesses. And that gap between the rich and the poor will grow. So for me, having those pop-ups of leadership, those outliers, is a breath of fresh air. And we're going to see a lot of that just because of how technology, for instance, has brought about this different way of accountability and pushing for change. The bad is our politics is becoming too violent. Too violent, too early. And I don't know if it's the curse of the number 7, 2027, 2007, 97, 2017. I really pray 2027 will not be violent, but we are seeing signs. And what worries me is even when you look at the images of the violence, it's men. Do you see women there? No? You'll see, like, even when the president was going through his motorcade, it was just this crowd of goons, young men. And it's becoming so toxic to a point where it'll be difficult for us to even feel safe in a public rally. And so already when the engagement of women is, we've talked about this earlier, is low, it's going to get even lower. And the thing about the protests last year that made me happy was seeing baddies. I was like, yeah, these are the ones who are normally you'd not see them. They're now here. They're like, no, I care about my country. And to see even movements like End Femicide, consistently out on the streets pushing for change, and now they're doing public participation, which we hope will lead to change. So for me, that's the thing that's scary. When people start pulling out guns.
We have those clips, you guys. Should we? I don't know if we've run them yet. Should we?
Yeah, let's talk about them. This is what happened yesterday, just to contextualize. We saw Goons causing chaos, and that's a big headline in the Daily Nation today. Shame of political thuggery. Goons caused chaos at the launch of a party by former DP Rigathi Gachagua. Violence, yet another ominous signal to a growing political intolerance ahead of the next election of 2027. Now, Rigathi was introducing his party to the public yesterday. He spoke. And later, now as a reaction to this, we also had the Deputy President, Kithure Kindiki, speaking about this. And I think the Interior Cabinet Secretary, Kipchumba Murkomen, also commented on this rise of violence. Let's start with Rigathi when he was speaking at the launch of his party, because I think he also made reference to the violence that had happened before this. Listen to this.
My fellow countrymen, our nation needs a restoration of dignity in the spirit of the unfinished business of multi-party democracy. Our sense of duty to patriotism and nationhood towards a new Kenya, where every citizen is listened to, has come. My countrymen, it is time to provide a conducive environment for peace, justice, and speedy restoration of development, respect for the rule of law and human rights. It is time for liberation of our beloved country. It is time for our nation to take off socially, economically, and politically. History will be kind to us for taking a bold move to listening to each other.
Those politics of violence, division, incitement are old-fashioned politics. We must resist those politics as a country.
Preliminary also investigation indicate that some of the supporters who were invited to come for this function were expecting to be paid some amount, and as a result of fighting over those resources, there was a melee which unfortunately led to some kind of a stampede.
explanation in this kind of incidences. Every time there's violence and political violence, there's always some explanation from the security. We were not alerted. We had not been told that there would be this meeting. We understand that there were some people from the other side who wanted to come in and infiltrate, or those that came wanted to be paid and they were not paid. The bottom line is there is violence. And the same political figures are usually involved. How do we get out of this, Nerima?
So 2017, we saw the rise of bloggers, people being utilized to share false information, and even the rise of goons being used to disrupt meetings. It has become more expensive to hire a goon, by the way, from 2017 to 2022. So let's highlight that. So we are seeing a population that doesn't have access to opportunities. So when opportunities that exist are causing violence, it's a concern. When people are talking about goons were sent from here, from there, it's a shame that to be a politician today, you have to have a budget for goons. That is crazy to me. And then the non-accountability from the parties or from the individuals themselves. By the time an event of yours is violent, someone needs to pay. Someone needs to answer. Who, specifically, caused this violence, and who's going to pay? Is there a fine? Is there a jail term? Is there a court case? Nothing. We cannot continue to meet these meetings and these images of thuggery with silence. The fact that people have died during a motorcade is insane to me. Yeah, and we are normalizing violence. For me, we cannot accept, because even yesterday I was with a friend of mine. She's Nigerian. She now lives here. She's in school. And she was like, I came to Kenya specifically for school because, I mean, it's like the hub of democracy for Africa. I left Nigeria because of that. And then I'm looking at the news and I'm like, this is looking more and more like Nigeria, if not worse. And I am concerned with the growing number of goonship and the fact that we talk about it as if it's normal. We are not a mafia nation. We are not being run by the mafia. We have systems in place and a constitution. We need to abide by the rule of law. People need to be held accountable. It's not normal. There should be no excuse. People need to tell us who they are, and people need to pay.
As young people, as GenZs, I won't say even, just young people, anyone who's just interested in a different way of doing things, how do we build safe spaces to have these things? Because you've actually scared me a little bit, because I had not thought about the impact of the lack of safety and what it will do to the numbers of women in leadership, women participating in elective politics at any level, everything from voting, So how do we build safe spaces? It's a tall order.
Yeah, no, but very good question, because you're already in spaces, like from the base in your community to Chama. Now, the only thing I would add is every time you meet with your Chama, have an aspect of what's going on in the country. How do you feel about it? What leaders can we identify in our community? What's going on with the finance bill? Do you know? Just bring things that are up here, close to you and your community. And I think out of that, those sparking conversations begin to build interest and networks. The networks exist. What we don't do is politicize the networks. That's what we're not doing. Politicians are very good at doing that, and they do that every day and consistently. And that's why we're here launching parties this early. That's all they do. They live and breathe it. So this needs now to be our conversations. And then the other thing is identifying community builders, organizations like ours, or even close to you. There are communities. Every community has a CBO or an NGO, or even a person themselves who is thinking about the community and doing better for the community. How can we partner and do this? If it's every Saturday we do a cleanup together, simple things. We need to contribute back to our communities and connect with them. Not assume that just because there's someone who's elected that they're supposed to be in charge and we trust them to do it.
and to organize us.
Yeah.
Our next guest is, and because we're now moving this conversation broadly and making it a baraza, our digital baraza today is, can Gen Z build political power? And Gen Z here is basically talking about the youthful population of this country. That's the majority. Arnold Maliba, who is the party leader of the Progressive Plus Alliance, will be sitting where Nerima is seated right now, and we'll be talking about, so he and others met last week, and they said, we youthful people who are desirous of, taking over political power, and that's why we are coming together to, start forming those groups of seeing how do we work together, how do we build on each other's strengths, how do we hold each other accountable, how do we mobilize together, same things that you've said. Then they got a lot of pushback and clapback on it. But he'll tell us what he thinks about it. Nerima Wako will join the X Space. Yeah. And,
she's like, okay.
That's how I will. There. So coming up to 8 a.m., it's 8 a.m. actually, so stick here for that. Join the X Space at NTV Kenya on X.